The first thing I noticed when I stepped off the bus at Fort Raven was the way the other recruits stared. Whispers followed me like shadows. "Who let the city girl in?" someone muttered. My boots sank slightly into the muddy parade ground, and I felt every eye on me as if I were exposed. Drill Sergeant Miller's voice cut across the morning fog like a whip. "Private Hayes, move it! Is that the best you've got?" I froze for a moment, unsure if he had even looked at anyone else yet. A harsh laugh erupted from the barracks across the field, and I felt the sting of dozens of gazes. Why was I even here? Did they know anything about me at all? No one believed I belonged in this uniform. Corporal Jenkins was the first to make it personal. During gear inspection in the barracks, he snatched my duffel and dropped it into a puddle. "Watch the weaklings fall apart," he sneered, eyes gleaming with cruel amusement. Everyone laughed, and I could hear it echo in the narrow hallways lined with polished boots. My shirt was damp, my pride soaked along with it. I bit back the words that wanted to escape my lips. I didn't need to answer. That would have been weakness too. At Chow Hall, it was no better. Plates clanged and voices rose in the chaos of breakfast. I carried my tray carefully, only to have it jostled by a taller recruit who sneered, "Careful, city girl, don't spill your latte on the floor." Laughter rippled around me loud and sharp. I felt every pair of eyes drilling into me as if I were some kind of spectacle. I thought that was the end of it, but I kept walking, careful to keep my head straight, shoulders squared. What I'd never expected was the quiet presence of Specialist Ortiz. He didn't say a word, didn't intervene, yet the way his eyes lingered on me, just for a moment, carried a silent acknowledgement of what was happening. No one else saw it, or if they did, they didn't care. It was subtle, but it gave me a fragment of strength, a reminder that someone, somewhere, might understand. Later that morning, we lined up for morning PT. Drill Sergeant Miller paced in front of us, voice sharp, whistle in hand. "Private Hayes, step forward. You call that a push-up? You call that discipline?" The mockery was public, relentless. Every grunt I made, every failing count, felt magnified tenfold. Sweat ran down my back, mingling with dirt, but I didn't flinch. My jaw tightened. My hands dug into the ground. There was a rhythm in the chaos, a beat I forced myself to follow. Discipline, I told myself. Endure. By midday, it seemed the entire company had marked me as the weak link, the one to target. Even in the moments when I thought I could catch a breath, a snide comment or a pointed stare reminded me of my place, or at least the place they assumed I occupied. And yet I noticed details others overlooked. The shine on polished boots, the cadence of shouted commands, the way orders were delivered and obeyed. Every small observation, every whispered instruction, built pieces of knowledge I would need, even if I didn't know it yet. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the barracks, I found myself standing by the flagpole, fingers brushing the worn fabric of the base's colors. My uniform was wrinkled, my face marked with the day's trials. But in that quiet moment, I felt a seed of resolve taking root. Something inside me refused to break. What I couldn't see then was that this small gesture, this fleeting connection to the flag, would be the first of many that marked the path ahead. And just when I thought the day couldn't hold more humiliation, Corporal Jenkins tossed my canteen across the mess hall floor, laughing as water splashed over my boots. I bent to pick it up, slow and deliberate, and whispered a quiet, calm, "Thanks for the heads up." The room froze for a fraction of a second. I didn't know it then, but someone was watching, someone who would remember. If this story resonates with you, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next chapters of this journey. The next morning, the rain hadn't let up. It pounded the parade ground in relentless sheets, turning the dirt into thick mud that sucked at my boots. I thought I could avoid attention, keep my head down, blend in. I was wrong. Drill Sergeant Miller's voice cut through the storm like a knife. "Hayes, move! You think the mud will wash away weakness?" My chest tightened. Every grunt, every slip felt like a spotlight on me. I pushed harder, arms shaking, mud coating my uniform. My lungs burned. My muscles screamed. Still, I refused to fall. I couldn't. Corporal Jenkins appeared at the edge of the formation, arms crossed, eyes scanning me like I was prey. "What's the matter, city girl? You need a hand?" He smirked, and a few others snickered behind him. I ignored them. Didn't look. Focused on the drill, each repetition a tiny victory. That's when I noticed Specialist Ortiz standing at the side, rain dripping off his helmet, watching without comment. His presence was quiet, but it mattered. A subtle reminder that someone recognized the effort, even if no one else did. Breakfast in the mess hall was no relief. Trays clattered, soldiers shouted across tables, and the smell of burnt eggs mixed with coffee filled the air. I carefully carried my tray, keeping it steady, only to have a plate shoved into my elbow by another recruit. "Watch it, new girl. Don't spill your milk," he sneered, eyes bright with amusement. The table erupted in laughter. I felt heat rise in my cheeks, but I forced calm. I set my tray down carefully, eyes forward, pretending the whispers didn't cut me. Between drills, I found myself alone, studying tactical maps and radio codes in a corner of the barracks. Every muscle ached, every nerve screamed, but I kept going. Each small observation felt like a lifeline. How commands were relayed, how soldiers moved in formation, even the pauses Drill Sergeant Miller allowed before snapping at someone. Knowledge built strength that no one could see, yet it was mine. That quiet preparation became a secret arsenal. Midday brought another challenge, an obstacle course set up by the sergeants. Mud pits, high walls, ropes slick with rain. I faltered on the first wall, fingers slipping, heart pounding, a chorus of snickers behind me. "Go ahead, city girl. Maybe you'll make it before dark," someone yelled. I gritted my teeth, hauled myself up, fell, scrambled, and finally swung over. Every wet inch I conquered, every grunt I pushed out, felt like a tiny declaration, I belong. During the course, I saw Ortiz again, crouched by a rope, ready to call out if I fell, but he stayed silent. That was enough. Silent support, small but crucial, like a lifeline I could cling to in the storm. I finished the course, drenched, shaking, but undefeated. Corporal Jenkins clapped slowly, smirk faltering, eyes narrowing as if realizing this city girl wasn't going to break. Afternoon drills were merciless. Push-ups, sit-ups, sprints. Every time my arms threatened to give, my legs to collapse, I reminded myself of why I was here, what I had to prove. To myself first. I began to notice a subtle change, my endurance improving, my form stronger, my confidence creeping into my posture. I wasn't just surviving, I was learning to thrive in their world, even if they didn't yet see it. Later, while cleaning gear, Jenkins tried to trip me, smirking as I stumbled, but caught myself before falling. The others laughed, expecting my humiliation, but I didn't react with anger or shame. I straightened, eyes cold, hands steady. That moment, small as it was, felt like a pivot, an invisible signal that the game was changing. Then came the moment that shifted everything. Nightfall, blackout conditions for a navigation exercise. The squad had to move silently through dense woods, relying on radios and hand signals. My own radio sputtered and died, cutting me off from the team. Panic flickered across my face for just a second. Then I remembered what I had learned in the barracks and in the rain. I signaled with hands, improvised paths, adjusted the squad's movement, and managed to guide them past a treacherous ravine without a single casualty. Every eye turned to me. Corporal Jenkins froze. Specialist Ortiz nodded once, barely audible, but the weight of recognition was heavy. By the time we returned to camp, drenched and exhausted, the squad's dynamic had shifted. Whispers replaced laughter. Snide remarks faded to quiet, tentative respect. I was still soaked, still shivering, but there was a new tension in the air, a subtle acknowledgement that I could endure what they could, maybe more. The climax wasn't loud, not explosive in sound, but in effect. It flipped the unseen hierarchy, demanded recognition, and left everyone unsettled in a way they couldn't ignore. Later, in the quiet of the barracks, I sat on my bunk, muscles aching, uniform stiff with mud. I thought of the morning, of every mocking word, every shove, every glance of doubt, and I felt something shift inside. This wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about proving that endurance, strategy, and quiet strength counted for more than arrogance and mockery. Ortiz dropped a water bottle next to me. No words, just a small nod. That simple act confirmed it. Allies could be subtle, but their presence mattered as much as victory itself. As I lay back, exhausted but resolute, I knew the story wasn't over. Something had changed, yes, but the next challenge would be harder, louder, and no doubt just as humiliating if I slipped. Yet for the first time I felt ready. Ready to endure, ready to rise, ready to turn every doubt, every cruel word, into the fuel that would carry me forward. If this story resonates with you, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next chapters of this journey. The morning fog was thick, over Fort Raven, curling around the training grounds like a living thing. Every footstep echoed off the damp earth, reminding me of how far I still had to go. Drill Sergeant Miller's whistle pierced the mist. "Move it, Hayes. Think you're ready for the real challenge?" The words weren't just a challenge, they were a dare, and I could feel every eye in the company following me, waiting to see me stumble. Today was different. Today was the navigation exercise through the dense woodland beyond the ridge. We were split into squads, each led by a squad leader, and mine was not kind. Corporal Jenkins had a gleam in his eyes that spelled trouble. From the start, he made it clear he wanted me to fail. "Don't get lost, city girl," he sneered, shoving a map in my hands. The others laughed, their boots crunching through the leaves in unison. I didn't answer. I just looked down at the map, trying to steady my nerves. As we moved, mud sucking at our boots and rain soaking through uniforms, Jenkins kept up a relentless stream of mockery. "You really think you can keep up? Maybe we should leave you behind as target practice." The squad chuckled, some glancing at me with expectation of failure. My heart pounded, not just from the exertion, but from the weight of every doubting glance. I forced myself to breathe, focus, follow the path, and quietly observe the land. Every detail mattered. The slight bend in a creek, the patterns of fallen branches, even the subtle shifts in the wind. Hours passed. Fatigue set in. My arms ached from carrying gear. My legs burned with every climb. My fingers were numb from cold. At one particularly steep incline, I stumbled, and a wave of laughter crashed from the squad behind me. "Careful, or we'll have to drag you out by your city heels," Jenkins barked. I bit back frustration, pulled myself up, and kept moving. It wasn't just about surviving anymore. It was about proving that silent strength could speak louder than taunts. Then it happened. The signal flare. An unplanned twist in the exercise. One of the team's radios failed completely, leaving the squad cut off from the command post. Panic flashed in a few faces, but I knew instinctively what needed to happen. I grabbed the map, double-checked our coordinates, and began issuing hand signals, leading the squad around a ravine that no one else had noticed. My voice rose over the wind, clear and precise. "Left flank, stay tight. Watch the slope." Every command I gave was followed, without hesitation. My legs trembled, my chest burned, but I didn't falter. Corporal Jenkins froze mid-step, confusion flashing across his face. The squad, which had been mocking me hours ago, followed my lead without question. Every step, every calculated movement, felt like a small triumph. Specialist Ortiz, who had stayed quiet at the edge all day, finally gave a barely perceptible nod. That simple acknowledgement sent a wave of relief and pride through me. For the first time, I saw a glimmer of the respect that had seemed impossible to earn. The climax hit when we reached the final checkpoint. The team was exhausted, drenched, trembling. I noticed one of the younger recruits trapped between rocks at the river crossing, slipping toward the current. Without hesitation, I lunged, hands gripping his jacket, pulling him to solid ground. A few soldiers gasped. Even Jenkins looked stunned. My heart was hammering, my muscles screaming. But I had done it. Saved a life. Reversal of authority wasn't in a title. It was in action. Suddenly, the mocking laughter from the morning had no place here. As we exited the woodland, dripping and mud-covered, the mood had shifted entirely. Murmurs replaced taunts. Eyes that had once held doubt now held surprise, a hesitant respect. Jenkins avoided my gaze, his arrogance gone, replaced with unease. I could feel the psychological pivot. The day's events had silently, irrevocably flipped the unspoken hierarchy. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was leading, even if no one yet dared to admit it. Back at the barracks, we stripped off soaked gear, the warmth of the showers doing little to wash away the exhaustion. The squad lounged around, some quiet, some fidgeting nervously. Jenkins muttered something under his breath about city girl luck, but his voice lacked its usual sharpness. Ortiz caught my eye from across the room, shrugged almost imperceptibly, and that gesture felt like a medal in itself. Dinner in the mess hall was subdued. The previous laughter, the snide remarks, had been replaced by an uneasy silence. A few soldiers offered small nods or brief words of acknowledgement as I passed. It wasn't full praise, not yet, but it was the first sign that I had become part of the squad's rhythm, no longer an outsider to be mocked. Later, during evening roll call, Drill Sergeant Miller paced slowly in front of the line. "Hayes," he said, voice quieter than usual. "Report." My legs trembled slightly as I stepped forward, expecting a reprimand, perhaps more public humiliation. Instead, he nodded once sharply, his eyes assessing, heavy with something that could have been recognition. "Good work today. Keep it up." Just like that, in one brief acknowledgement, the weight of the day lifted slightly. In the quiet moments after lights out, I lay on my bunk, muscles aching, body exhausted, but mind racing. The humiliation, the relentless mocking, had not vanished, but it had been overshadowed by the truth of my endurance and the impact of my actions. For the first time, I felt a sense of power that didn't come from titles or authority. It came from proving that perseverance, courage, and quiet leadership mattered more than arrogance or appearance. What I didn't realize at that moment was that this day had set a precedent. Word would spread through the ranks about the way I handled the exercise, the way I led, the way I saved a life. I wasn't just the city girl anymore. I was a soldier to be reckoned with. Even Jenkins would have to reckon with it eventually. The psychological shift was subtle but seismic, like a quiet tremor that everyone felt, even if they didn't fully understand it. As I drifted towards sleep, the rain still pattering lightly against the barracks roof, I felt a strange combination of exhaustion, pride, and anticipation. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new tests, perhaps more ridicule. But I was ready. Today had proven that strength could be quiet and resilience could be loud enough to flip the entire dynamic. Specialist Ortiz's small nod replayed in my mind. It was confirmation that I wasn't invisible. I was seen. And that recognition, however subtle, was enough to fuel the fire for what was to come. If this story resonates with you, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next chapters of this journey. The morning sun cut through the blinds of the barracks, painting sharp lines across the floor, and I could feel the tension in the air before I even got out of my bunk. Word had spread about yesterday's navigation exercise, and the atmosphere was electric. Anticipation, grudging respect, and a hint of fear circling the squad like vultures. I swung my legs over the bed, boots thudding against the floor, and braced myself for the reactions I would face today. Corporal Jenkins was the first to appear, leaning against the doorway with that same smug smirk, but it was off somehow, less certain. "Heard. You didn't drown anyone yesterday," he said, voice attempting casual mockery but faltering. I simply nodded, tying my laces tight, and ignored him. My silence seemed to annoy him more than any insult I could have thrown back. In the mess hall, the atmosphere shifted further. Soldiers who had laughed at my city accent now gave curt nods as I passed. The quiet acknowledgement was subtle, but it was the first sign that the tide had begun to turn. Our next exercise was in the obstacle course, a relentless gauntlet of ropes, walls, and mud pits. Jenkins tried to block me at every turn, pushing me aside and calling out, "This one's for the rookies. Don't get in the way." I felt anger rise but held it down. Each step I took was calculated, measured, precise, and I could feel the squad watching, evaluating, realizing that I wasn't just keeping up, I was excelling. Specialist Ortiz lingered nearby, giving quick nods and small signs of encouragement that I kept in the corner of my mind. Halfway through the course, we hit the rope wall. My arms burned, muscles trembling under the weight of exhaustion, but I focused on form, not speed. Jenkins scrambled after me, muttering under his breath. Halfway up, he slipped on the muddy rope, cursing loudly. I kept climbing, steady hands gripping the rope, feet finding holds in the mud, silently aware that everyone was watching this minor disaster. By the time I reached the top, even a few of the mocking soldiers looked impressed, their whispers betraying disbelief. The climax of the day came unexpectedly. A simulated casualty drill went wrong. One of the recruits took a misstep near the water obstacle, slipping dangerously close to the edge. Instinct overrode fear. I sprinted, diving to grab the recruit before the current could take him. My hands gripped tight, hauling him back onto solid ground. Soldiers froze. Jenkins' jaw dropped. The squad watched in stunned silence. The tables had turned completely. Actions spoke louder than arrogance, and leadership was no longer a question of rank or ridicule. After the drill, the squad gathered to debrief. Jenkins attempted to save face, muttering, "Lucky move, city girl," but no one laughed. Even he knew his usual bravado had been shattered. Drill Sergeant Miller stepped forward, eyes scanning each face before locking onto mine. "Hayes," he said, voice steady but carrying weight, "that's how leadership looks. Take note, all of you." A hush fell over the squad. The acknowledgement was subtle but absolute. I felt a surge of pride, tempered by the exhaustion, knowing that the psychological shift had been solidified. Evening brought the quiet of the barracks. Soldiers showered in scrubbed uniforms, the air thick with damp and sweat, the lingering smells of the day's exertion. In the corner, Ortiz gave me a quiet thumbs up as he passed. That small gesture carried more weight than any words. He had seen me fight, had seen me lead, and silently recognized the transformation. Jenkins avoided my eyes entirely, retreating to his bunk with the faintest look of shame, masked by frustration. The power dynamic had shifted, and everyone felt it, whether they admitted it or not. During dinner, the mess hall was filled with subdued chatter. Soldiers spoke in hushed tones, glancing at me occasionally, their laughter replaced with cautious acknowledgement. I ate quietly, focusing on the simple meal, savoring the victory in the smallest of moments. What had been humiliation yesterday had become respect today, earned not with loud declarations but with steady action and unflinching determination. Later in the briefing room, Drill Sergeant Miller pulled me aside. "You handled yourself well, Hayes. Don't let it get to your head, but know this. You've earned the squad's eyes and ears. That's something no one can take from you." His words, quiet and controlled, resonated more than any public praise could. I nodded, heart still racing from the day, aware that this recognition was a milestone, a pivot point in how I would be perceived and how I perceived myself. As lights dimmed in the barracks that night, I lay on my bunk reflecting on the day. The day's trials had been brutal, mockery, doubt, exhaustion, but the consequences had been transformative. Respect had begun to replace ridicule. Trust was forming in subtle, quiet ways. Leadership had been proven through action, courage, and steadfastness. The antagonists had been humbled, the silent supporters encouraged, and the dynamics of the unit irreversibly altered. Even in the exhaustion and quiet moments before sleep, I knew the journey wasn't over. There would be new challenges, new drills, new tests, but the foundation had been laid. I had begun to redefine what it meant to lead, to endure, and to command respect without ever raising my voice. Tomorrow the exercises would continue, but now the squad would see me differently. And that shift, subtle yet powerful, would ripple through every action, every encounter, every drill that lay ahead. If this story resonates with you, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next chapters of this journey. The dawn broke soft over the base, painting long shadows across the parade ground. I stood at attention, boots perfectly aligned, the morning chill biting at my skin, and for the first time, I felt the weight of the respect that had been earned over weeks of trials. The squad had formed into neat ranks behind me, faces a mixture of pride, awe, and quiet acknowledgement. Even Corporal Jenkins, who had mocked me relentlessly, now stood rigid, eyes averted, yet betraying a grudging respect. Drill Sergeant Miller approached, his steps measured, the authority in his presence undeniable. He stopped before me, eyes scanning the ranks, then lifted his hand in a crisp salute. "Hayes," he said, voice calm but carrying weight. "You've shown what discipline and resilience truly look like. Lead them forward." The squad snapped to attention behind me, and for a moment the world narrowed to the echo of boots hitting the ground, the cadence of synchronized movements, the unmistakable rhythm of honor taking hold. As we marched across the field, the tension of past humiliation lingered in my chest, a reminder of where I had started. I could feel the silent support of Specialist Ortiz walking nearby, nodding subtly as if to say, "You've earned this." The small gestures of the past, the quiet encouragement, the brief glance of trust, had built the foundation for today. And as I glanced at Jenkins, I saw not arrogance anymore, but recognition, a psychological shift that spoke louder than any words ever could. Later in the debriefing hall, the squad gathered around the long table. Sergeant Miller spoke first, recounting the drills, the challenges, and the leadership moments each soldier had displayed. When he reached my name, the room went silent, every eye fixed on me. "Hayes," he continued, "your actions saved lives, inspired your squad, and reminded us all why discipline and courage matter." I felt the heat rise in my chest, a mixture of pride, relief, and disbelief. The room shifted, the mockery of the past dissolved into a quiet reverence that hung in the air like a tangible weight. Then came the final surprise, the moment that would seal everything. The base commander entered the hall, uniform immaculate, eyes scanning the squad. He stopped in front of me, and for a brief, almost breathless instant, I felt the weight of the journey, the humiliation, the struggle, the silent endurance, crystallize into clarity. "Effective immediately," he announced, voice strong, "Hayes will assume the role of acting squad leader for this rotation. Your leadership has proven itself beyond question." A stunned silence followed, the squad digesting the reversal of authority, the vindication. Even Jenkins' shoulders slumped, the arrogance gone, replaced by a hesitant acknowledgement. After the formalities, the squad moved into the barracks. The chatter was softer, respectful, genuine. Soldiers shared glances that spoke volumes without words. Ortiz clapped me on the shoulder quietly. "Knew you had it in you," he murmured, and I nodded, feeling the subtle warmth of camaraderie that had been hard-won. I passed through the bunks, catching glimpses of quiet smiles, small gestures of acknowledgement that reinforced the transformation. That night I stood alone on the roof of the barracks, the city lights stretching beneath me like a river of stars. The wind tugged at my uniform, but I felt steady, grounded. The journey had been brutal, mockery, exhaustion, doubt, but it had led here. I had walked through humiliation, endured relentless trials, and emerged respected, trusted, and recognized for who I truly was. The battles were far from over, but the foundation had been laid. I could face the future with confidence, knowing that honor, resilience, and quiet strength had carried me through. I looked back at the lights of the base, thinking of every small act that had led to this moment, the silent nods, the glances of recognition, the courage under pressure. It all added up. The journey had transformed not just how the squad saw me, but how I saw myself. And in that quiet, exhilarating moment, I understood something profound. Respect isn't demanded. It's earned silently through unwavering resolve and integrity. If this story resonates with you, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next chapters of this journey. The morning sun stretched its first golden fingers across the base, catching on the folds of the American flag as it snapped crisply in the wind. I stood at the head of the parade ground, boots planted firmly, chest rising with quiet pride. Around me, the squad formed a perfect line, eyes forward, rifles held with precision, and for a fleeting moment, silence ruled the field. Then, one by one, each soldier rendered a crisp, sharp salute. Even Drill Sergeant Miller, whose voice had once cut through me like a blade, stepped forward, eyes locked on mine, and offered the briefest, most meaningful nod of respect. No words were spoken, but everything that needed saying was in that simple gesture. The wind carried the rustle of uniforms, the distant clang of boots on the pavement, and a solemn gravity that wrapped the moment in permanence. Standing there, I let myself feel the full weight of the journey, the humiliations, the quiet struggles in the barracks, the long nights under the harsh glare of drills. All of it had led here. Injustice had shaped resilience. Prejudice had been met with unwavering dignity. Silence had been broken not with anger, but with steady courage. Brotherhood had emerged in unexpected places, in a glance, a nod, a quiet word of encouragement. And in that truth, I realized what we all know but often forget. Actions speak louder than words, and what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. The lesson is simple yet profound. No matter where you begin, mocked, overlooked, doubted, you carry the power to change perception, to earn respect, to embody honor. You sow patience, integrity, and perseverance, and one day the harvest is unmistakable. It is the human spirit, disciplined and resolute, that commands recognition, not titles or bluster. If this story resonates with you, share your thoughts and experiences in the comments. Like the video to show support, and subscribe to join a community of stories that honor resilience, courage, and humanity. Remember, even in the quietest moments, your strength can speak louder than any voice around you, and your journey leaves a mark long after the sun sets.